Yeah, now do the testing 1, 2, 3. So here we are with Herman Krieger, and Herman just donated his archives of photographs to the Pacific Northwest Photography Archives to preserve them for posterity, as it were. And what I wanted to know for starts, Herman, was how you got started in photography. I think it was in your childhood, or tell me where it started.
In high school, it was got started with a small group, a dark room run by the biology teacher. And we had an old-fashioned speed graphic, 4x5 graphic, and so taking school pictures.
Was it involved with a newspaper or yearbook, or just like a
not
club?
Yearbook, just the newspaper only, not
okay,
yearbook.
So it was newspaper.
And we only did contact prints of that from the 4x5 negative from the paper.
Well, with the 4x5 from the newspaper, that's all you needed.
Yeah. And of course, when we went out to take any photos, there was a very small group of us. And of course, we were rationed with flash bulbs and films during the war.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's school activities, sports activities, and things of that sort.
So what years was this? What years was this from?
That was in 42, 43.
Okay.
Well, 41, 42 essentially.
Okay, so the first part of the war.
Oh yeah.
And were there any particular aspects of subject matter that you were drawn to, or was it just sort of everything?
No, I really just got started on that. I never did it as a hobby. It was that, and then while I was working in the school photographer thing at the local Jewish community center, there was a dark room, and there was a fellow working in there evenings. I went in and talking with him, and he was doing it commercially, making use of the dark room, and I started helping him. It was free labor, and I ended up doing all the printing. He was an ex-newspaper photographer, but he didn't really know how to print too well. He had the idea everything had to go on F4 paper. And he did a lot of work for UAW-CIO locals. But the commercial thing he did was taking pictures of bowling teams. And I got started printing, going several evenings a week. And he'd buy me a dinner once in a while, something like that. And so that's how I got started.
And would you make prints of the team and he would sell them? Was that?
Oh yeah. Well, the gimmick was you take a picture of a team. We'd run back to the dark room, make 5 prints or enough for 5 people in a team, or depending on the size of a league. And then rush back while they were still bowling and sell them $1 for an 8x10 print.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Oh yeah. Well, that was his gimmick.
And he at least bought you dinner.
And I started printing for him. And he was active with the Packard local, UAW-CIO. I then was working weekends at a photo shop in Detroit, at a photo counter. It was a large hardware sporting goods store, and they had a counter with cameras, and I was working as a clerk there. And then I got started at Packard Motor Car Company through his influence. He was working there also. And I got into the dark room there. I started off as a photostat operator, but pretty soon I got shifted doing the enlarging work because I have experience in printing too.
Right.
But I learned a lot more there.
And this was still in high school?
No, I graduated from high school when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
So it was after that, before I went into the Army.
So this was a real job for a while.
Oh yeah, for a couple of years.
Wow.
And so I was doing all the enlarging work. It was mostly 8x10 negatives with 8x10 enlarger.
And did you read books on how to enlarge, or did you just figure it out?
No books at all. It was all practical or help from the people working there.
Okay, so all experience.
Yeah, most of the photography done at the Packard Motor Car Company, they did the were making contact prints from the 8x10 negatives. There were 2-3 people who did nothing but make contact prints all day long. So I was doing the enlarging work until I went into the Army.
And then what were your adventures in the Army?
Well, I had interest in flying. I learned to fly. I was a member of I bought an interest in an airplane from people who worked at Packard, the engineering department. And so I was a cadet in the Air Corps. I enlisted in the Air Corps when I was 17, and when I was 18 I got called up for duty as a cadet. And
was the war still going on then?
Oh yes. And I was waiting to go for flight training when the war in Germany ended, though, and they didn't need more pilots, and so they closed all the flying schools, and they gave us a choice what technical school we wanted to go to. In the meanwhile, I picked radio or something, and I got sent to a photo school, quite by accident, and aerial photography, processing it, but learning to handle an 8x10 view camera, the speed graphics, and so on. So at the end of the course, 12-week period, half the people were sent for occupation duty to Japan, the other half to Europe, and I got sent to another part of the same base to become an instructor at the school. And so that lasted several months till the war with Japan ended, and I got sent home as an surplus air crew trainee.
Wow.
And so then
it really started your whole photography direction.
Yeah, it was all commercial. I never did it as a hobby.
Mm-hmm. Did you do family photos or anything?
Well, yeah, when I was working also at Packard, I had a 5x7 Deerdorf view camera. And I was also a freelance photographer for a weekly newspaper, Jewish News in Detroit. And I used that 5x7 view camera with open flash as a press camera.
Sure.
But then I recall one Christmas, I was going door to door soliciting to take pictures of a family group for Christmas time. And so I had about 5 visits like that, using that 5x7 Deerdorf again. As a view camera, as a press camera, or just a camera,
yeah.
And I liked it because I could make contact prints. I didn't have to enlarge them.
Yeah.
So that was my extent of photography before entering the Army.
And then at some point you went to college. Was that on a GI Bill or?
Yeah, I started on the GI Bill. You know, after the war I was working in photography again for the same fellow who I'd worked for free before. But he had his own setup, office and studio then. And then also I was going to college, Wayne University in Detroit. But then I was working evenings. I got a job at a nightclub in Detroit printing the photos that the camera girls were taking because the hours were from 8 to 2.
So talk about the camera girls and what that was all about, because that may be something that's that's not really general knowledge anymore.
Well, that was a big thing in all the nightclubs throughout America. You had camera girls. They had 2¼ by 3¼ speed graphics with flash bulbs, and they would solicit take photos of people, of a group or a couple in the nightclub. And then they'd come up to the dark room with the films. I would have to develop the film and then print from the wet negative. And I would make enough prints, one for each person, or a vignette of a couple at the table. And then the girl put them in folders, 5x7 size. And then the camera girls would bring it to the people to sell to them. So much per photo. So it was very hectic.
Really?
Rush. It depended on if it was New Year's Eve, then it was crazy. There'd be anywhere from 1 to 3 camera girls working in that club in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So another high pressure experience.
Oh yeah, but I printed the photos, and rarely a scrap photo. I had the feeling for the exposure on it and so on. Yeah, it was pretty rushed. And so I was doing that, and then at the same time during the day, you still have film there?
Still doing good.
Okay, and then with another friend who also worked at another nightclub for the same company, we had the idea of taking pictures of children with a pony, or it was my idea. And we had one pony we bought from a farmer, and we carried it in my friend's car. It had a 1937 Chevrolet sedan. We took out the back seat and pushed the pony into the car. And the way we did it was called kidnapping, that taking children's pictures like that. And we'd walk with the pony on the street, get kids following us, and using a 35 millimeter Leica. The kid would sit on the pony, we would lay chaps on them, put a vest and a hat on them, take their picture, get their name and address. Never let them ride the pony though, get the other kid on. And we'd go up and down streets like that. And then on the weekend, I would do the printing of the photos, make up 2 copies of each photo in a folder, and we sell them $1.50 for one or $2 prints for $2, something like that, just to show and ask if they wanted to print like it. And so we did that one summer, and the next summer we bought 2 ponies, and we had a panel truck to carry the ponies in. And then my friend and my partner and I, we walked on separate streets, just leading the pony around. So we did that for 3 years, summers.
Wow. That was your college summer jobs?
Well, that was a summer job. Yeah, I was going to school on a GI Bill, but doing that extra anyway. And,
wow. And what direction did you go in college? What did
well, I was pre-med to start with. I knew a professor at the medical school in Detroit, and I thought I would be able to get in if I was interested. And then one year I worked nights at a Harper Hospital in Detroit as an orderly. It was very quiet, I could sleep then, but I gave up interest of medicine after that. And so my major was chemistry, though. And I went to California after that, though didn't finish Wayne University, but pretty much in chemistry. And so I ended up in San Francisco, just driving across country. And then I got a job in a paint company. The ad said something about color, and I thought, well, color photography, I knew something about that. Well, it turned out to be in the paint lab. When they learned I had studied chemistry, I got a job in the laboratory. And then after a while, my specialty was the industrial paints on auto finishes, air dry enamels and lacquers.
Now, had you gotten a degree? Had you graduated college at that?
No, I did. I didn't graduate from college then, but I had majored in chemistry.
So you took it for what, 2-3 years and?
Well, I had a few years of chemistry and majored all through.
But you got enough of a background.
Oh, enough to suit the paint company.
Right.
And then I thought to go back to school. I was then a resident of California, and so I enrolled at the University of California in Berkeley. And I thought to continue in chemistry, but I got interested in mathematics, and I switched majors and then graduated with a major in math.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do with that. I thought,
I was gonna say, what do you do with a math major?
Yeah, I thought it was teaching. And what appealed to me about teaching was a 3 months vacation a year. I thought. And then a colleague of mine who also had studied math had a job in an aircraft company in Southern California, and told me about it. And so I went there to get a job. I thought, well, save money. I wanted to make a trip to Europe and then maybe go into teaching after that. But I found the industry to be much more interesting. And I got started in computers there at a very early date.
So this is in the mid-50s at this point?
Mid-50s, yes. So it was a large IBM computer. They had the North American Aviation Company. And so it worked very well. I was a member then of a small research group doing my own ideas and programming for them. And then I got hired into the electronic division of North American Aviation, where they designed computers. And there were several of us who were hired away from the main factory into the electronic division. And so they designed the computers, the Minuteman missile computer, they built and did the programming. And I got started on a computer for submarine navigation. It was a combination general purpose computer and it was for, and of course we had to write our own assembly programs from scratch, and I wrote programs for the computer to help the factory check out the machine. And that was very interesting work. And then I still wanted to go to Europe, so I had a leave of absence from the company, and I went to France. That was in '59. And I was going to school in France, I started off. But then I got interested in languages. I studied Russian while in Paris.
Good reason to go to France.
Yeah, and it was very strange. Then they opened the borders to Russia at that time for foreigners with their own car. I had my own car. So I made a trip to Moscow driving there because I had been studying Russian also. It was an interest. And
I'm thinking about the time frame, 59, 60, that's when the meeting with, I imagine, Khrushchev pounding on the podium. Was that the next year,
was
maybe?
Was that afterwards?
I think it was like maybe a year later, but that was...
Yeah, or before. I don't recall the time frame now. Or I think Brezhnev was maybe then premier when I was there.
Wow.
I recall now. And it's a funny thing. I sent a postcard to the people back at Autonetics where we had all really ultra secret rating and all that. A postcard of the Kremlin, and on it I wrote in Russian, "Here's a picture of the target. Don't do anything until I'm back." Okay. So then I was a year and a half.
It's amazing the postcard made it through.
Yeah. And no postcard, no problem. And then I went back to visit the company, and I thought, well, I would get a different job. But the moment I stopped in, they punched my clock. They punched me in. I was already back on working there. And in the meanwhile, several people had left that company to start their own company, a smaller company. And then they hired me to work there as a programmer. Oh. And working on actually they had a contract for an artillery computer, and they wanted to build a device to go with the computer, a battery display unit. And so they accepted the programming job to go with it, to have full control, and they hired me to write the program on this field artillery computer. And so that took about a year. And after that I went back to France. And I had a job in a computer center, arranged to a friend in France. And so I was working at this computer center, and they had an early IBM computer with Fortran, and I never used Fortran before, but they thought, me coming from America, I'd be an expert on Fortran. So in no time I knew it. But it was a French version of Fortran. It was all in the French language. Well, I knew French then. And they never used French again in a programming language because they were 6 months behind all the computers in America. And then that company I'd worked for in America started operations in Europe. They had a representative a distributor in Holland, and they hired me then to work for them in Europe. And then I moved to Holland from France, from Paris, more for technical assistance to the distributor and customers in Europe. But before long I got pushed into marketing. And after a while I was in charge of the whole operation in Europe, marketing. And we had eventually our own offices in Germany, England, and Italy, and France. And then they had me come back to America to be their international sales manager. And then meanwhile, I got married in Holland.
Did you meet Atta in Holland?
Hmm?
Did you meet Atta in...
Yes, I met my wife there. We were living in the same building, and I got married. And then they had me come back to America as international sales manager. So my wife, we moved to California. And after a year, though, well, the company wasn't all I expected. I liked about it, and the climate, we couldn't get used to that uniformity of climate. And so then I went back to Europe, first for the company, and then I left them shortly after. And I got so much into marketing, administrative, and I didn't enjoy that at all.
And what was the company based on? What?
The main object was a digital plotter. It was the first one,
Okay.
and for technical applications, it was
For like architects and things like that?
architectural drawings, any kind, and graphs, scientific graphs.
Okay.
Um,
So they tried to get you to sell machines, basically.
Yeah, that's right. It was the first graphical output device for a computer. And so it had some pretty good market to begin with. But I didn't really like working and pushed into marketing, sales. We were reading about quotas and personnel. And then I wanted to get back to working as a programmer. So I left the company and I started back in programming. And then got a job with a company that was a competitor to the one I had as taking care of all the software support in Europe. And I worked from home in Rotterdam. The company was a subsidiary of Bosch & Lomb. And they were in Belgium, and I would go to the office once or twice a month. Worked from home mostly, or traveled from there all over Europe. Okay, did that for 10 years. And then decided to come back to America to retire.
So besides French and Russian, what other languages had you learned?
Well, I'm fluent in Dutch and French, and I know German quite well. Yeah, I get by in German. Well, Russian,
Just dabbled?
I had a good reading knowledge of Russian, but never much practice speaking it.
So I think I'm going to stop here.
Okay. Made by farmers in part of France near the Swiss border. It was a wintertime craft that farmers would work on different parts of it, and it would be assembled. Each village had their own clock with a name on it.
Wow. Pretty neat. And actually, let's very quickly move this over here to show the clock. And then we'll move the camera back in just a second, just so that the camera knows what we're talking about here.
The thing is that people will keep just watching the pendulum.
I know. That's why it's mostly out of the picture.
Hypnotize people.
And I think we're good. So when we left off, you were just coming back to America from Europe. And you'd been programming in France, and you were you were in Holland.
I was working in France as a programmer, and the company I'd worked for before in America was starting distribution of their digital plotters in Europe. And their first distributor was in Holland. And they asked me to work for them in Europe to provide technical support for the distributors and customers.
And you did that for 10 years or so?
No, that was different. That was in the early 60s. And I did that for several years in Holland. And then they asked me to be their to come to America, take a job as international sales manager for them.
And where was their home base at that point?
It was in Anaheim, California.
Okay.
California Computer Products, or they went by the name CalComp at the time.
So back to a single season.
Okay. Yeah, it was for 1 year, and I wasn't so happy with the company working at the company, and we weren't so happy about the climate in California particularly. We missed the change of seasons. So we went back to Europe, still for the same company, to take over the operations in Holland again. But then after 6 months, I left the company, and I got back into programming. So that was in 1971. Doing other things, I started then working for a competitor of that company based in Belgium, their main European office, as a subsidiary of Bosch and Lomb, and as a software support manager for Europe, doing all the programming. And the programming wasn't only for the computers making use of the graphic device, but we had European competitors with similar machine, and our distributor in Germany wanted to be able to sell our machine in place of that German one. And then I would write firmware for our machine to imitate the others. The competitor machine, ours would be plug compatible to the competitor because I wrote the firmware for it to do the job. Anyway, I worked 10 years then, till 1985, and decided to retire and to come back to America.
And where did you land when you came back?
Well, we didn't know where we were going to move to in America, but I thought to retire in America. I was misuse of the American language for one thing, other reasons. And so we visited different parts of America. And then one time we flew to San Francisco, rented a car, and drove to Seattle. And I had a nephew living in Eugene at the time. We stopped off here, a college town. It seemed like a nice place, so we settled here.
Wow. So that was the mid-'80s, mid to late 80s?
That was late 89.
Okay, good.
And then I thought to go back to school. The university was here, and I actually planned to go back into computer science, sort of learn what I'd been doing all those years. And then I found out that they had a photo classes in the art department. That was strange to me. Photography had been a craft or a trade, not an art. And so I thought, well, I'd take a class, but I had to change to that department. And I did that. Okay, I stuck with it. And
So before you entered the photo department, how aware were you of what I would now call famous name photographers?
Not at all.
Did you look at Life magazine?
Oh yeah, of course. Grew up with Life magazine, and I saw Ansel Adams, and I was really struck by the beautiful photography prints done by Ansel Adams that I saw in an office once in Washington.
I'm thinking Dorothea Lange and Margaret Burkwhite and those people.
No,
did those names mean anything to you at that point?
No, not really. Only from Life magazine.
Okay, good.
Okay. No, I had no feeling for art, for photography as art, or photographers in general. But I didn't do photography. I had a camera with me. I bought and just for snap shooting, holiday pictures. Okay, I entered the art department at the University of Oregon. And then it was interesting. We had to make, every quarter we had to make a portfolio. I learned how to put together a cohesive set of photos.
Who were your teachers at that point?
That was Terry Warpinski.
Okay, good.
And Dan Powell. So I had nothing to learn in the darkroom there. I had my own darkroom that I set up at home here in Eugene. But then I learned how to make a cohesive set of photos. Every quarter we had to make a photo essay or photo group of photos. But the photos I took were not of people, they were just scenes. I was too shy to approach people to take a picture of them. And then my wife was doing quilting, and she was visiting a group near Blue River for quilting, and I would drive there, and I would walk around Blue River. I thought I'd take photos there, but I didn't want to stand out, so I had an old camera, a super I got to be, looked like a funny tourist, and just walking around taking pictures. Well, I started talking to people as I was walking around there, meeting them, and then asked if I could take their picture, And I was so surprised that nobody objected. So that's why I got into taking pictures of people.
Wow. And did you start taking notes about what you were doing right away? How did you document what you were
I
doing?
wanted to get the names. I would write in a notebook the name of the person I was taking a photo of.
So almost like when you photographed the kids on the pony.
Well, yeah, I know you might say there was first
I can
to
sort of
sell
see-
to the kids.
Yeah, I can sort of see a methodology
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah.
had developed from way back.
Yeah, well, I wanted to have a caption to go with the photo, know who I was taking a photo, and also I wanted to be able to give a print to the people on a subsequent
But you
visit.
didn't come back and try to sell them for $1 though.
No, I wasn't selling anything then. No, when I was selling pictures, then you had to please a customer or a boss. And I didn't want to get into that situation. I would give photos away always. I never sold anything because otherwise I felt like I was working for them and I didn't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
And so also I would get to know people. This was a number of visits made to Blue River because my wife was going once a week there to that quilting group nearby.
So was that one of your first neighborhood projects, or?
Yes, it was. It was the first one really with people. Well, neighborhood ones, I had done photo essays following along the Amazon Creek in Eugene. Different things that were of a similar subject, but without people.
Okay. So this is really the first more sociological adventure.
That's right, yeah. With people plus the towns, and pictures of the town and the people in the town.
So what did it feel like both to you, and what was the reception from people who you showed the photos to?
Oh, they all liked it, yes. It was always a nice reception, yeah. No, that was always pretty good.
Yes, that must have been pretty encouraging.
Oh, yeah. And I always wanted to be able to go back and give a copy of a print to the person I took a picture of. And I would never ask for a release from anybody because I didn't intend to make it commercial.
Mm-hmm.
That was certain freedom there.
And the turnaround time for making the prints was a little bit less pressured than in your career
of course.
days.
Yeah.
Cool.
And,
So that was the first project, and then how did you find other projects to do?
well, this started in school. We had to make every quarter had to make a group of photos. So one year I had the idea of churches in the town. I thought just a symbol of a cross in the scene and a church. And I was surprised that so few churches had crosses on them. And so I got one group of photos just in Eugene of churches, and then I would add captions to them.
And if I remember right, your captions had a certain amount of satire to them.
Yes, I'm not particularly religious.
Well, borderline sacrilegious maybe.
Yeah, it also added to the photo.
Yeah.
And so I got more into the habit. That was with the church photos where I started adding captions really too. With the other photos, I'd add captions, but more for name of a person or a descriptive caption.
And you published a little book on the churches, didn't you?
After I graduated, I wondered, what am I going to do with this photography? Try to make a book or what to do. And I was looking at the projects and I thought, well, there's church photos, maybe I can expand that into a book and visit many other areas to take church pictures. So I tried finding a publisher for that idea. That wasn't no success there. And so anyway, I expanded on the idea of church photos for making a book. I already graduated. And so I traveled quite a bit around the West, and then on different trips I would look at churches, and that's how the book came about.
Mm-hmm. And at this point you had the luxury of time.
Oh yeah, of course. And I could afford to travel.
Yeah,
I was retired.
You were your own programmer at that point.
Yeah, I didn't have to work for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what were some of the other projects that developed out of this?
Well, that followed that. Then I became a member of the Photozone Gallery also at the same time.
Tell me a little bit about the photo zone.
Well, that started in Eugene, I think 1989. I joined, I came across the gallery by accident in I think 93 or something. I was a student, and I thought, oh, here's a photo gallery. That was new to me also, a gallery that had only photos. And okay, I became a member of the Photo Zone Gallery at that time, I think 1993 or so.
Was it essentially a cooperative gallery, or what was the
Well, it was
structure?
nonprofit. It was cooperative, nonprofit, and we ran our own gallery. If somebody had a show, other people would do the hanging. The person who had the show didn't have to do any of the work.
They had already done the work.
Yeah, and it would be a solo show or a two-person show, depending on. It was an old building in Eugene here to start off with. It was together with a new zone gallery. They had half of the building, and that was an art group. We were the photo zone. We had the other half of the area.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem always with own gallery was gallery sitting. And we were fortunate because the used zone, they had a lot of more members than they were sitting. Okay. And so we'd make photos. I would look for essay to exhibit, to have a show. And that's where I got to working on other groups of photos in order to exhibit them.
So what were some of the projects that followed?
Well, of course, along West 11th, I had the idea of just walking along the street there. I would drive over to West 11th, finish a roll of film. It was a medium-sized camera, mostly 8-exposure roll. And then I'd go back the next day, take more pictures, and then make copies to give to the people I met along the way.
So what geographical area did you cover? A mile, several miles?
Oh, no, it might be a half a mile in a day, something like that.
I mean for the whole project.
Oh yeah, that was for downtown all the way out to the city limits. So that was, I don't know, how long is it? How far is that? 8 miles maybe? Oh. And of course it's varying. It started off just houses, residences, became businesses, and then more commercial as you go out West 11th. Yeah. Okay, then, other thing, we made a trip back to Holland. There was a photo, it was every 2 years they have a festival in one town in Holland, in Naarden. It's a walled city about 20 kilometers from Amsterdam. I took my bicycle with me then. It was in 2002. I would ride my daughter was living in Amsterdam, and I would ride out to Nijmegen, Naarden, take for every day. It lasted a month. Almost every day I would go out there. So different groups of pictures with a Leica camera, and I would develop the film every night in the hotel room, and then every day take another roll, and got to talking with the people there, and that's one of my photo essays also, visit to Photo Festival Naarden.
Wow.
And so always looking for different ideas of what to do for a photo essay.
Now I saw the Oregon Art Beat film that was made of you where you were riding your recumbent bicycle.
Oh, yes.
What kind of bike did you have on that trip, and when did you transition to a
Well,
recumbent bike?
I had a bicycle in Holland, a good touring bike, and then I did a lot of bicycling around in Holland, and brought the bike back. And I got the recumbent. It's made here in Eugene. It's a folding bike. We'll go into a suitcase, that recumbent. I took that with me to Holland. And I gave up an upright bike once I got used to a recumbent. Much more comfortable. Under the seat, steering, and everything open in front, you can see the countryside. Anyway, I had that bike in Holland, and then every day riding it from Amsterdam to that town about 20 kilometers from Amsterdam. And then just walking around that town with a Leica camera.
And was Leica your choice of cameras after a while?
Well, that has been a big choice for a long time, especially pictures of people. But I like the mid format. The pictures along West 11 were with a Fuji 6x9 camera, and where I like the medium format with 8 pictures to the roll, or other medium format, I have 10 pictures to the roll. I don't snap many photos. I take a long time looking and then make an exposure. If it's people moving, we'll have to make several pictures. But generally, I make only a single photo of any time I make a photo. It saves a lot of editing time.
So that's really hearkening back to the view camera aesthetic and working method.
And not only that, also going back to when film was rationed and expensive. So I was pretty stingy always with the use of film.
Good. Well, it pays off in, like you say, in editing time.
Oh yeah. I don't. Also, I attended a seminar given by Bill Jay in Portland. Chris Rauschenberg was also there. Well, there were 5, 6 of us in this short little seminar given by Bill Jay on photo essays, and he had several points made. That you had to know the subject, it had to be something accessible nearby, and you had to take a lot of photos. That I didn't do. The other 2 things I tried to stick to. Subject you got to know, and something nearby that you could keep going back to.
And Bill was a wonderful photographer and writer about photography. What other photographers did you interface after you, either during or after you had gone back and gotten your degree in photography?
Well, only the members of PhotoZone, essentially. I knew well from the photo week and for the time in Holland at the photo show. I got to meet a couple of Dutch photographers, and one I still kept in touch with long after that. Otherwise, it's just with the PhotoZone people.
Okay, good. And did the PhotoZone have regular meetings? Tell me more about their function in addition to the exhibition space.
Oh yeah, we had a meeting every month there. It was a relatively small group, less than 20 people at the time. And we had our own gallery, so we had to pay money, $20 a month, something like that, for rent.
And what were your monthly meetings like? What did you do at the monthly meetings?
I think it was more social.
Did you show your photos or talk about them?
No, we didn't at the time. Now they do that at the PhotoZone meetings. Now we don't have our own gallery, and they show photos. I guess some people would show photos, but as I recall, it's mostly social.
Okay, so that was the early roots of it.
Yeah, and then when we lost that gallery, the PhotoZone gallery, we were together with UZone. It was a building that belonged to eWeb here in Eugene. And then Lane Arts Council had to move also. They were upstairs from the gallery because we rented the space from the Lane Arts Council. And they moved to a building, to a store, empty store on Broadway downtown. And then PhotoZone had the front part of the store. Well, we didn't have to sit because they were open for business there. And we had our gallery for a couple of years at the front part of the store. And they moved, and then we had to hustle to find other exhibiting places until we finally had no place to go to. So we had no more gallery.
But they still continued to meet and show each other photos.
Yeah, it's social, really. Yeah.
Okay, good. What's the most recent project that you've worked on?
The last one I did was called A Walk in My Neighborhood. I didn't have to go far. Just pictures of people in the neighborhood, of friends, people running, and then in the park next to, in the neighborhood next door to us. A lot of people there always with their dogs, and I got talking with people in the park, would take a picture of them with their dog. And then the Oakway Shopping Center is close next door also. And then I knew people there from walking around there. And so that was part of it. And then more pictures just in a wider area from the street, around the street, just street photos in the neighborhood. So that was just called a walk in my neighborhood. And that was essentially my last photo essay.
Now, I remember from the Oregon Art Beach show, it showed a dark room in your house.
Oh, yes.
And when did you move out of that house?
That was about 10, 12 years ago. And we wanted to move to a single level house. Then it was all becoming digital, and I thought, well, how can I stay with film? You know, it was all going digital. And so then I sold my cameras. I thought, well, I'm going to be digital. We're not have a dark room anymore. And then I was sorry afterwards that I've gone back to bought a film camera. I developed the film in the house, but I don't print. I don't print anymore. I scan the negatives. But at that time, the scanners were not so good. I couldn't scan 35 millimeter, the quality wasn't suitable. And so I went to medium format also to be able to scan better, get better quality. But now the scanners are so good, I'm sorry I gave up my Leica camera.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
And so you really made the transition to computers, which again was coming full circle.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, I'm back to working with the computers, but on the graphics side.
Yeah, but you're not doing the programming now.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't do any more programming.
Good.
But I know how to play with the computer a bit to do what I want.
Good. So are you anticipating making any new projects?
I don't have anything in mind now. Occasionally a project will come out. I'm a member of the Willamette Valley Photo Guild also. And sometimes we go out with a group in parts of Oregon. And I go along with the group to make the photos also. And I guess this summer they're planning some other trip in eastern Oregon, so I'll go along there. But otherwise I don't have any other idea in mind.
Okay. So in conclusion, what do you think was the most memorable experience you had making a photograph?
Making a photograph? I don't know. Because you were taking it or printing it, or I don't know now.
Actually, when you were working the camera is what I'm thinking of.
Well, I think the most memorable thing that I can think of, and I don't have the print anymore, that was when I was 17 years old in Detroit. I had a Super Icon B camera, and I was doing freelance work for a union newspaper also, and walking in a parade, a Labor Day parade in Detroit, and Truman was there, right, as vice president candidate. And I got a picture of him. He was sitting back in the convertible, just the were motorcycle police alongside him. They were circling in front of the City Hall in Detroit, and the sunlight came right out down at that moment on him. And I had made a photo just at that time, and I think the Union newspaper used it. But when I left Detroit in 1950, I left all my films and prints home, and they were lost.
Yep.
And I don't have any copies of that photograph.
Oh,
That's the most memorable one I can think of.
okay. And now, essentially, our Pacific Northwest Photo Archive is trying to prevent the loss of what you've done ever since.
Yeah, and those are all the photos I made working in photography in the 40s, while in the Army, with all the pony pictures.
Gone.
All gone, yeah.
Well, at least everything else is saved.
Yeah.